Let's get into it. Yeah, there's a lot of friends and familiar faces here.
Yeah, it's lovely to see so many great fans come to Dallas. Big state, Texas.
Yeah.
Lots of driving. Lots of driving miles.
Yeah. So first question, I heard this about you. Tell me if this is true or not. You were not, before going into Saw, and are still not a fan of horror films. Is that true?
I'm more of a fan now than I ever was.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, that doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
You can accomplish as much with a horror film as you can with any other genre. For many years, horror films kind of producers and writers and people that made films didn't take them especially seriously, and it was all about the scares and the things that they thought people went to horror films for. But I think some of that has changed. I think that Saw was instrumental in pushing some of those changes. So my point is that you can accomplish as much with a horror film as you can with any other genre. It just comes down to the writing, and it isn't all just about scares. You can have full characters, full relationships, and they can be very layered and interesting films. I would suggest a film which might not be really considered a horror film called Jacob's Ladder. It's a film that Adrian Lyne directed that was way ahead of its time. And if you look at it now, you see it still stands up very well, and it's intricate and well worth the watching. So it's got good, realistic performances in it, and some special effects that are really simple but very scary in a certain way. So I recommend that film. It's been around a while, but if you haven't seen Jacob's Ladder, take a look at it.
Yeah, I actually talked to Lee Ronell and James Wallace back in 2003, kind of right after Sundance, and I think you're right. I think that Saw kind of ushered in a new era of kind of smarter horror. I remember talking to them about where just the basic idea came from. Did you ever imagine back then that this would go on to become kind of a new, it's the big horror franchise of this past decade? I mean, did you ever have any indication that would happen?
Not until Saw 1 was as well received as it was.
Yes.
Lee and James, two young guys from Australia, came here with a 10-minute short, and they arrived at just the right time, happened to meet the right guy who introduced them to another guy, and they were looking for the right vehicle and something they could make on a certain budget, and they went ahead and made Saw 1. And when I got involved with Saw 1, I sat with James for a while, and I did the film for a couple of reasons. One was that it was three guys locked in a bathroom, which a lot of people, people don't make films these days with sort of a Waiting for Godot theme in it, and so I liked that, and I wanted to work with Danny Glover. I had never worked with him. I thought the ending to the film was totally caught me by surprise. And I thought, well, if they can shoot this, if the viewer is as surprised as I was when I read the script, because usually I can see those kind of things coming, if the viewer is as surprised as I was, that'll be a cool ending. And so doing a film is not, you don't always do a film for the size of the part or the number of lines. You do it for a variety of different reasons. And I thought the ending of that film, if it was well done, would be a pretty special moment in film history. So, and they did it well, so it was worth doing for that reason. No, I didn't expect that it would go on for 7 films after the first was received. The way it was, I was in the Czech Republic working on a series for NBC. They came to me and they said they want to do a Saw 2. They sent me the script, and I thought, wow, this could be a cool opportunity to get this guy up off the floor and see who he is. And so that opportunity to develop a central, I always knew he was central, and it's interesting, physically he was central. He was, Carrie was here, and Lee was here, and he was there. And so I knew he would be, if they were ever to do anything more with this film, that he would be central. And so for me it was a great opportunity to take some of the themes that Lee and James had developed, like the treatment of the terminally ill by the medical profession. There were all these little threads in it, appreciation of your blessings, and things like that. And I thought, wow, if we can keep these themes in the films as we move forward, we can layer the films so that they're not just scary movies or what some people call torture porn and that sort of thing, but we can make them more interesting. And fortunately, I was working in an environment that they would take thoughts and ideas and we could work them in and we could keep the films. Because for an actor to work in a film like that, there's only so much of the violence that's interesting. You know, you really want to bring out the human elements of people, because that's what makes the viewer, what draws the viewer in, if the people are real. So that's what we did. So that's the long answer to, did I think it was going to go on for 7 films? No, and I'm glad that it has, and I'm glad that you're all here.
We're glad we're here too. I mean, now looking back, 7 films, 10 years since the first one, which is really hard to imagine. What's it like for you now to, like, Jigsaw was kind of a new horror icon for a new generation, right up there with Jason and Freddy and Michael and Pinhead. I mean, and there's people here dressed as Billy the Doll. There's a girl riding around on a tricycle. What's that like for you? I mean, that's kind of mind-blowing.
I have to be honest with you. Did you ask me if I'm not? I've never. You asked me about my feelings about horror films, and I don't view horror films. I've never seen any of those films. I've never seen the Jason films. I've never seen the Freddy films. I've never seen any of them. So I guess I'm a novice. I don't approach horror films in any other way that I approach if I play a priest or an astronaut or anything else. It's all about, I'm not thinking, oh, this is a horror film. If you watch who John Kramer is in those, I'm not playing a scary guy, although you put him in that setting and under those circumstances and it can be scary. But for me, I'm looking for who am I, where am I, what do I want, when do I want it, how am I going to get it? And everybody, the same as you, you're doing the same thing. We all do the same thing every day. So I'm trying to create as rich and as full a character who, is going to be somebody that that the viewer is going to be interested in. Yeah, there's going to be the twists and the turns and the scares and all the things that a horror film has to have. But you can also have full individuals in it and people that are interesting. Look at Tommy Lee Jones in Executioner's Song, a Norman Mailer novel that they made a film out of. By the end of that film, you understand who Gary Gilmore was and why he did. Does it mean you agree with what he did? No. but you get a sense that he was a child once, like we all are and were. And that's what makes spending 2 hours looking at a 60-foot screen interesting, that somehow you identify with what you're seeing on the screen.
Yeah, and I think that's what Saw did smartly, was it told it told the majority of the story from John's perspective, and it gave him humanistic things that he believed in. They weren't just he was. I mean, on one level, he was killing people to kill people, but there was a purpose behind it. He wasn't just going around stabbing people just because he was a homicidal maniac.
Yeah, no, he says on a number of occasions, "I've never killed anybody." Yeah. And he believes that. And his whole, I've always thought the most successful Saw films were the ones where they link the particular circumstances that the subject finds themselves in to crimes that they have committed in their life. If they're greedy, or they're surrounded by things that reflect their own sins, and their trap is made up of things that where they have crossed the line in their life. And I thought that was always very interesting to me, just from a karma point of view. So I think philosophically, I think the films can be very interesting. I have always tried to wrestle.
What about a favorite Saw? Is there a favorite? Do you have one near your heart?
2 and 3.
Yeah.
I liked working with Donnie Wahlberg a lot. I felt we got the most out of those scenes at the table in 2. They were tension-filled, and it's rare that you end up seeing on the screen what you felt in the moments when you were creating it, and it was all there. Darren Bosman did a great job putting those scenes together. I was grateful for that. I really loved 3 because I love Amanda.
Let's take some questions from the audience. Let's take some questions from the audience. Yes, you sir. Right there at the left, sure.
You know, on toward the end of the 7 films that they made, I myself got confused, about where we were in the time frame, Frankly, I think they put a couple of recordings in with his voice, but most of them were mine all the way to the end, and I think they decided at one point, don't start using it. That just gets too confusing, and I wasn't sure they knew what they were doing. So I think they decided we'll use the recordings as that they were pre-made, So I think they pretty much carried. I mean, I know, for example, in Saw 6, is 6 or is it 3D? Which is the one I made all the recordings in 7, where the guy is he becomes a star because he survived my traps. That was 7, I think. I did all his recordings. There's a guy locked in, he's stuck, he's crazy glued to his car seats in a body shop, and I remember doing all those recordings. So it was really, I can't give you a definitive answer to your question, because there were a couple of tapes they decided, we'll have Hoffman do those tapes and we'll disguise his voice or something, and then they decided they were just confusing themselves, and so they put it back the way it was. I think, so there's not really a definitive answer to it. And I love Saw fans and horror fans because you pay attention to details, and it keeps, when you make a film, there's a lot of compelling reasons to make the film, and there's a lot of people involved who aren't necessarily artists, who sometimes make decisions about things that are artistic decisions, but, you know, don't get me started.
Yes, sir, right up here.
As someone who's not a big fan, or didn't start off as a big fan of horror, when you got into this film and figured out it was going to be so huge, did you worry about getting typecast? And if so, do you feel like you've lost some roles because of being Jigsaw?
I'm not in those rooms when they say, no, we can't use him, he's Jigsaw. You know, so I don't know the answer to that question. Was I concerned about that? Hell no. You know, how often do you get to play the lead guy in as popular a series of films worldwide? I mean, if you worry about stuff like that, I mean, you live in the present and you try to do the best work you can do, you know? I mean, if Eric Clapton wants to give up rock and start to play jazz, he can do it anytime he wants to. And if I want to give up this guy and start playing this guy, then that's my job as an artist, to find the way to do that. And believe me, these people that you're talking about who make those decisions about typecasting and stuff like that, they may make those decisions, but once they see you do something else, the first thing is, oh, I always knew he could do that. You know, so all you need to do is one thing to change that, to break that. And they always say, oh, I mean, he's such a good actor, he can do anything, you know. And so, you know, no, I wasn't worried about that at all. Had an opportunity to work with Lionsgate, one of the most active and biggest studios in Hollywood, to represent the film to a lot of press outlets and media outlets, and it's all been great, and I would have no regrets whatsoever. Yeah. You know, if you're afraid of getting typecast, you'd never play anything. You know, you have to pursue opportunities when they happen and make them the best you can make them, and the rest you worry about later.
All the way in the back, Batman.
Can you hear me in the back?
That's a film called Ruby back in the early 90s. Do you have any personal beliefs or personal recollections about the JFK assassination?
About what?
The JFK assassination. This is Dallas.
Wow, I know where we are, man. I know where we are. Do I have any personal feelings? Yeah, I don't think it, I've never felt like it was Oswald. It was entirely Oswald. I just had never felt that way. I always felt like it was there's too many factors. Don't get, you know, this is a whole subject in itself, but there's just, I mean, the man's playing with a gun that cost him $19 or something like that, and making 3 shots so beautifully done with a tree in the way. You know, I just, so do it that, you know, it's history, man. It's like what this man's talking about. It's gone. It's done. You know, you move on and try to learn from it. Do I think it was a conspiracy? Yeah, I do. But maybe it wasn't. Maybe he did do it. You know, stranger things. You could write that script. You could write a great script. Either way, you just need to come up with the details.
Yes, sir. Right there in the glasses.
Can you hear me?
The question is, have you ever tried to piece the whole chronology together? I don't think anybody can do that.
No, I haven't, but people have. You know, I've seen it online. But I saw something online once, and then it got taken off from it infringed on somebody's rights or something. But I saw John Kramer's entire chronological history, the way it played out, from his attempted suicide to what, you know, it was really quite amazing. You know, that this young person had done that. You know, it was maybe 5-6 minutes long, but it involved Jill and Hoffman and everything. It was really great.
Yes, sir.
Don't be asking me questions in Boston Red Sox.
Now, you've had some memorable character actors in parts. I don't know, were there any favorites, like, for instance, like when you played the Seinfeld?
He's talking about
the actors that I've worked with?
Yeah.
Hell, I've worked with Gene Hackman. I loved working with Gene. I worked with Gary Busey, Tom Cruise, Holly Hunter. I've been very, very fortunate in that way. Willem Dafoe, worked with directors like Alan Parker and Sidney Pollack. So whenever you work with people who have accomplished a lot in their career, it's always an honor to be on the same stage with them. And you feel like I'm doing it, what I always wanted to do, and it happens in little pieces of time. So it's a great thing not to go to Gene Hackman and jump away from Kramer and Newman, because Kramer and Newman made as much of an impression on me. Those guys, incredible pros. I didn't have to do a lot in that Seinfeld episode. They just were so great, and so that's. The fact that, I did an episode of The Sopranos, and so I got to work with Gandolfini and with the girl who plays his wife, I can't remember her name, Edie Falco, who is a fabulous actress. And whenever you get a chance to work with people like that, it's an absolutely great thing. You feel like I'm doing it, and they're always very gracious. Terrific. I made 4 movies with Hackman and learned a lot from him.
And 24, of course.
Yeah, we did 6 episodes of 24 with Kiefer Sutherland. That was great too. And yeah, that was a hot show at that point in time. So you keep moving on, you don't know what's going to happen next. That's what's great about this business.
Right here.
The only part I heard was personal life experiences.
She asked, did you pull for John Kramer, did you pull from any life experiences, and how did you kind of shake playing that role when you left the set?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time, first of all, I spent a lot of time reading the script, then studying the lines and getting them so that they're second nature to me. And then I say to myself, what does he mean by that? If you say to me, oh my God, I'm exhausted. Well, that can mean 10 different things. Are you exhausted because of your boyfriend? Is it emotional exhaustion? Are you physically exhausted? Have you been working? Is your mother browbeating you? What's going on? There's a lot of different kinds. So what does he mean when he says such and such? Because it can be this, or it can be this or this. So I do a lot of background work on that. And do I pull on personal experiences? Everything. Everything I do, I pull on personal experiences. Sometimes I'll make a conscious decision. Like I just played a guy on Criminal Minds, CBS show. Yeah, I pulled on some personal experiences. I'll give you an example. The guy on Criminal Minds says something that he ran like a coward. He says, yeah, I ran like a coward. Well, we've all run like a coward. Yeah.
My question for you is how far into the lore of convoluted plot of all of a sudden Danny actually have in mind this kind of thing whole story? Did he have the whole story kind of laid out after he said it in the second movie, or did he just kind of
Danny?
Yeah.
Danny Glover?
No, not Danny, sorry.
Darren.
Dan?
Talking about Darren? The director?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. To the credit of the producers of Saw, I think they frequently waited until after the previous film was released before they began to even think about the next film. And then they would begin to shape the direction that they wanted to go, what sort of traps they might use. But sometimes it came to do with the actors. Which actor was available, wasn't available. They would kind of write the scripts around people, and not always a good idea, by the way. that's the answer to your question is, I don't think they knew after 1 what 2 was going to be. And I don't think after 2 they knew what 3 was going to be. I think it definitely evolved. They shot 1 a year, so they were on a tight schedule to get the script written, to get it produced, and then to get it through post. And then get it released, marketed, and all that. That's a lot to do in a year for a film. So they kind of had a machine cranking it out. So they were, one film would come out, they'd make decisions regarding the next. They didn't, I don't think they had a direction that they were going to go in this thing.
All right, we got time for one last question. We're gonna wrap it up. Things they ever really good. You think you got the last good question? All right, go for it.
Who is the funnest or funniest co-star you've worked with, and do you have a story that goes with it? End on a laugh.
It's a lot of pressure for a horror guy. Kramer and Newman, there's no question about it. These guys, their physical comedy was their thing. You know, they're Chaplin, and, you know, the Marx Brothers all rolled up in one, those guys. And the beauty of working with them was that they would go, because Kramer and they were potent enough and powerful enough on the show, unlike many other sitcoms, which are ruled by writers often, unless you're Julia Dreyfus in Veep, that you just kind of do it the way it's written. Usually it's producer, you know, star level or producer level people who can change. Newman and Kramer could do it because they had enough clout on the show, and they'd go, you know what, that's not funny. What would be funny would be if we did this. And they would change it like that instead of waiting for some writers in an office somewhere to come up with the idea. They had the clout to be able to change things. As I recall at the time, there was a little tension between Kramer and Newman. You know, there's a little tension, and I know it doesn't seem it when you see them with him, but I think the tension was partly because Kramer was a huge comic influence on that show. I mean, George and Jerry, they're funny, but Kramer was something else entirely. And then Newman kind of came into the picture, and I think Kramer felt a little threatened by Newman. And so some of that was going on while I was there, you know. And when you look at that scene, you'd never, because they just play off each other so marvelously. I just remember that was going on at that time. Leonardo DiCaprio story. I'm walking across from the production office into this town in Mescal, Arizona, where we're shooting Sam Raimi film called Quick and the Dead. Russell Crowe's in the film, Sharon Stone's in the film, Lance Hendrickson's in the film, Leonardo's in the film, young Leonardo. And I'm walking from the production office with Josh Donnan, one of the producers, and Leonardo comes walking up next to me. And Leonardo wasn't Leonardo then; he was a young Leonardo, not a Titanic Leonardo. And he's walking along with us, and but he was still Leonardo DiCaprio. He was already, you know, bigger name than me, you know, and he was 19, you know, whatever he was, 20. And he's walking along next to the three of us are walking through this little dusty, dirty cowboy town, and Leonardo turns to Josh and says, "God, I'm bored." And Josh looks at him and he goes, Leo, there's nothing I can do about that. And we just walked away. You see, you know, I think that what he was saying to us, like, that's something you gotta learn in life. If you're bored, figure it out.
He's probably not bored anymore.
I can't pay you any more money to not be bored.
Yeah. All right, we have to end on a solid note, so I will end it.
She's smiling, so I must have said something slightly amusing.
You gotta laugh. So Saw 7, Saw 3D, the final chapter.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, we gotta ask this question. There's rumors of Saw 8 and there's rumors of you coming back. How true are those, and would you like to reprise that role? Because we thought the book was closed.
Did you really?
I mean,
what do they say?
Saw in space. Yeah, that's the next place to take it.
Yeah.
Saw in
If
space.
Sandra Bullock can do it, I can. If I had any specific info, I mean, I have the same, you know, on my laptop as you do.
Yeah.
If I know more in 3 weeks or a month, there's talk about another Saw. Talk's cheap in Hollywood.
Yeah.
I honestly, I never believe anything that I hear there until I'm on the set.
Yeah.
You know, I just don't, because things change rapidly in that town. And now the president of Lionsgate has said that he would like to see more, that's a fact, more Saw. He has said that in an interview. So, and something like, no doubt we will, but you know, that and the $29.95 you paid to get in here will get you on the subway.
Well, and Lionsgate also has Hunger Games, so I think what they need to do is just throw Jigsaw into the Hunger Games. I mean, really put those kids to the test with a bunch of Jigsaw traps. I think there's cross-promotion. I mean, we can do it. All right, guys. Big round of applause for Tobin Bell. Texas Frightmare, so enjoy the show. Blair Witch panel coming up here at 5 o'clock in, I bet somebody knows, in the Maverick